Hello everyone, and welcome back to Turkish series Stars. I'm thrilled you're here, because today we're unpacking a story that set social media humming and sent fans racing to re-watch old clips, interviews, and red carpet moments. We're diving into Baktaş, Yağmur Yüksel, and that long-brewing confession that has come roaring back into the spotlight. If you adore these two or you simply love a good dose of heart-tinged showbiz tea, settle in. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe so you never miss what we bring you next. Now, let's get into it. The connection between Baktaş and Yağmur Yüksel has been one of the most intensely watched relationships of recent years. From the first time they shared a set together, the electricity was visible even through the screen, the kind of spontaneous synchronicity that makes a scene feel alive and unforced. Viewers caught it straight away, fan pages multiplied overnight. Behind-the-scenes glances and offhand jokes were scrutinized for signs that the spark hadn't been left behind once the cameras stopped rolling. And, as often happens when two people find an ease with each other that the world can't ignore, rumor gave way to truth. They confirmed what fans had already suspected. The two were more than co-stars. They were a couple. For a while, everything about them played like a modern fairy tale. If you followed their story, you know how it felt. The way he looked at her during interviews, the way she reached for his hand in crowded, chaotic corridors full of paparazzi, the candid photos that escaped from random moments in restaurants or on rap nights. Millions made them their favorites, projecting daydreams onto their images, rooting for them as if it would somehow protect the story from the turbulence that fame brings. They were glamorous, yes, but they were also disarmingly real in their moments of ordinary tenderness. The world watched, and the world loved what it saw. But the lives of public figures rarely unfold along a tidy line. Fame magnifies everything: joy, pressure, misunderstandings, until even small ripples become waves. Whispers of a split started to circulate long before anyone close to them would confirm it. At first, they went quiet, tried to let time calm the speculation. Yet reality has a way of surfacing. Eventually, they acknowledged it: Barış and Yağmur were no longer together. It was the announcement a lot of fans dreaded, and it left behind a litter of questions no press release could answer. What had changed? Why had a couple that seemed so grounded and attuned to each other decided to walk separate paths? This is where the story turns and the old confession re-enters the frame. Recently, Barış sat down for an interview, one of those calm, measured conversations where the lights are soft and the questions feel less like traps and more like invitations to be honest. He was asked about his past with Yağmur and whether there was truth to the idea that something eternal existed between them, a confession that had floated in whispers for ages but had never been addressed head-on. And it was his answer that startled everyone. He didn't chase drama, he didn't perform. He approached the question with that quiet steadiness he's known for, and instead of brushing it away, he carefully acknowledged that what they shared had depth, breadth, and a kind of unspoken permanence. He spoke about the way their lives shaped each other's, how their connection wasn't only about the romantic highs that people see in photos or scenes, but about the contours of understanding that form when two people truly meet. He didn't call it eternal love in a fairy tale sense. He didn't imply a hidden reunion waiting to be announced. He suggested something different, but no less powerful: a bond that lives beyond the boundaries of a label, a respect that doesn't dissolve with time, a tacit vow to carry the significance of what they had into every chapter that follows. He gave it language without locking it into a cliché, and because of that, the conversation around them has flared up again with fresh intensity. If you've been anywhere near the fandom lately, you've seen it. Some readers and viewers took his words and felt relieved, grateful that adulthood can look like kindness. Others, still nursing hopes for a rekindled romance, searched his phrasing for clues. Was there longing in it? Was there regret? Did he sound like a man who, given the right alignment of stars, might change his mind? And then there were those who simply appreciated the maturity of the moment. A person asked about a past love chose not to minimize it, not to protect himself with cynicism, but to honor it without making promises he can't keep. Meanwhile, both have continued to build their careers. You can feel it when you watch them now. The experience of that relationship doesn't cage them, it shapes them. Yağmur brings a glow into every new project, a steadiness in the way she listens to her partners on set, a confidence that comes from knowing she's earned every space she occupies. Barış has been everywhere, reading scripts, taking on roles that stretch him, saying yes to challenges that require him to test his range. Success for each of them hasn't slowed. But if you look closely, you can sense that the story they lived together, in all its intensity, left its mark. How could it not? The intrigue around this eternal confession isn't only about romance, it's also about language. The words he chose were precise enough to feel sincere and open enough to invite interpretation. That's why the clip keeps circulating, frame by frame, gesture by subtle gesture. Some critics argue that he was poetic to a fault, that no realistic bond can be eternal when two people are no longer together. Others push back, insisting that eternity in this case doesn't mean a promise to reunite, but a recognition that certain connections carve themselves so deeply into who we are that they never vanish, they merely change form. There's another layer to all of this, and it's the narrative of dignity in a public breakup. We've all watched couples go sour under the spotlight, where the end becomes a performance of blame and bitterness. That didn't happen here. If anything, the impression they give is that they did their grieving out of sight, guarded the parts that should stay private, and made decisions with care. That's rare, and it's part of why this resurgence of the confession feels especially resonant. It's evidence that you can love someone deeply, part ways, and still resist the temptation to rewrite the past as a mistake. His answer is a message to anyone who has ever loved loudly and lost quietly. What mattered then still matters now, even if it lives in a different room of your life. The global reach of their work has only amplified the conversation. Clips of their first scenes together still gain new views, fan edits still stitch together smiles and glances that seem to say everything without words, and comment sections bloom with speculation in multiple languages. The project that first joined their paths carried their names far beyond local stardom, and their off-screen chemistry turned them into something bigger than a pair of performers. They became a symbol of a certain kind of modern love story, one where two people meet at the intersection of ambition and authenticity and try to make a world within the world that keeps watching. Now, this latest interview reframes that old storyline with a more reflective lens. The question isn't whether a romance is still alive in the usual sense. It's about whether two people can carry a promise forward even after the partnership ends, a promise not to forget the version of themselves they discovered together, a promise to regard that time as formative and beautiful, not fragile and disposable. When Barış leaned into the idea without turning it into a headline-grabbing declaration, he modeled a way to speak about love that feels grown, careful, and real. So what is an eternal confession anyway? Does it demand roses and rings? Or can it be the kind of acknowledgement that sits, steady and quiet, in the center of who you are? If you listen closely to what he said, it sounds like the latter. It's as if he stood before the past and said, "This changed me, and I won't pretend it didn't. This taught me tenderness and responsibility. This showed me how to show up." And that kind of confession doesn't expire when the relationship ends, because it isn't a pledge to stay together. It's a pledge to keep valuing what was true. Of course, among fans, hope likes to keep one eye open. Messages flood timelines. Could they find their way back to each other? Would a reunion be possible years from now, with different schedules and wiser hearts? Maybe. Maybe not. But even those who quietly root for that plot twist can appreciate what exists today. Respect, gratitude, and a connection that resists the harshness so often baked into endings. That alone feels rare enough to celebrate. In the meantime, watch how both of them move. You can see that clarity in the choices they make and the way they talk about craft, family, and balance. When Barış describes a role that challenged him to be more vulnerable, you can almost hear echoes of experiences that asked him to be that way off-screen, too. When Yağmur speaks about finding focus amid the noise, you can feel the strength of someone who understands what it means to be seen and scrutinized and still keep a gentle core. The reason this confession has surprised so many isn't that it introduced a shocking twist. It's that it introduced a new tone. So much of celebrity discourse is fueled by drama, but what he offered was harmony, a way of saying that love held them both carefully when it mattered and that dignity holds them now. It's reflective rather than sensational, and in that quiet honesty, a lot of people recognized something more personal than gossip. They recognized themselves. When an actor with Barış's profile speaks this way about a relationship as beloved as his with Yağmur, the analysis inevitably deepens. Was there remorse in his voice? Did he wish the timing had been different? Or was he simply honoring a truth without reaching for a fairy tale? From where I sit, and tell me if you disagree. What he voiced wasn't endless romantic love but an undying acknowledgement of worth. It sounded like an oath to never dismiss what they created together just because the form of it changed. That's a rare kind of courage in a world that prefers clean narratives over complicated truths. We've seen plenty of public pairings dissolve into distance or disdain. That's what makes this mutual steadiness so striking. Instead of erasing their history, they've let it become a foundation. Something they can stand on as they move in separate directions. And to me, that says more about character than any publicity line ever could. It tells a story about two people who refuse to turn memory into a weapon, who choose, instead, to let it be a shelter for the good they shared. Think about the young fans who followed their every step. They watched the beginning, the glow, the quiet, and now this thoughtful aftermath. The conversation has reopened, but in a richer way, one that asks better questions about what love is supposed to look like when it's over, and what it means to honor the past without getting stuck there. If you've ever loved anyone, you know how hard that balance can be. Watching them find it, imperfectly, humanly, feels like witnessing a lesson unfold in real time. So here we are, at the part where the story folds in on itself. We began with a confession that's been rumored forever, resurfaced by an interview that could have gone anywhere and instead chose honesty. We trace the arc from on-set chemistry to global obsession, from gentle confirmations to a breakup handled in near silence, and finally to a moment that validates the entire journey without promising to repeat it. That's the magic of what we're calling the eternal confession. It isn't a vow to restart. It's a vow to remember, to respect, to carry forward what was beautiful without needing it to be exactly what it was. In short, today we walked through Baktaş's recent reflections on his past with Yağmur Yüksel. Far from denying the intensity of their bond, he recognized its lasting imprint. He gave language to an unbreakable thread, call it understanding, call it gratitude, that stretches beyond romance into something steadier. In doing so, he shifted the narrative from speculation to substance, leaving fans with a perspective that feels at once grown and tender. And that's why the story resonates. It's not just about two famous people. It's about what it means for any of us to love deeply, let go gently, and keep the truth intact. I want to hear what you think. Does this timeless confession point to lingering love, or does it read as a lasting respect and admiration that doesn't need a reunion to be real? Drop your thoughts below. You know I read every comment, and your insights are always powerful and passionate. If you enjoyed spending this time with us, give the video a like, share it with friends who follow Barış and Yağmur, or anyone who appreciates a story told with heart. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to Turkish series stars and tap the bell so you never miss an update. Until next time, take care of yourselves, and take good care of the memories that made you who you are.